Welcome to the WAVE. We are Voices of Ecology, a movement powered by the European Union ERASMUS Plus program. WAVE brings youth voices to the forefront, from real-life interviews with youth in the eco-village movement to exploring degrowth and youth perspectives on intergenerational fairness. We're a multi-host podcast where each episode is unique and is hosted by a different WAVE participant. With a rotating format, a diversity of voices, perspectives, and passions, WAVE brings them all to the mic. Join us as we dive into bold conversations, share inspiring stories, and explore how we can all live more sustainably.
In these dire times, both politically but also in the terms of the climate, what do we do against this climate disinformation? How do we tackle it? How do we give people narratives that maybe bring more hope and more action into the world?
I like it to. So I think that the main solution, and I mean, I said it in the most humble approach because there is not one solution. What is important to understand is that for a long time, if you're looking at strategies to tackle climate disinformation, it was evident that it was used fact checking. Fact checking, even though it's a great tool, doesn't work on a psychological level and also on a behavioral one, meaning that if you're already interested and influenced by form of disinformation, even if I present the fact, the truth, whatever is considered reality, you're already biased. You won't change your perspective, your position.
Mhm.
So there was a transition to more debunking and pre-banking. Debunking and pre-banking, particularly pre-banking, is based on inoculation psychology, and is the concept that I have to create policies, communication, and way of talking and interacting with people that are interested or at the moment are disengaged in the topic, that use this technique that is called the truth sandwich. So presenting the fake information, the truth, and how to debunk that specific fake news. In this way, you give directly the tools to uh, whoever is interested to understand, filter, and develop sort of antibodies against antibodies they're called, or anticorps. I don't
Yeah,
remember. Okay,
antibodies.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yep, yep.
antibodies against different form of misinformation.
So can we then talk through an example? Say I'm someone and we're talking and I tell you, I think Shell is actually already doing enough to help us reduce emissions.
So I found myself quite recently in a similar conversation. I was going to Sevilla, and I was in this taxi, and the taxi driver was quite yeah, climate denier. That's the only definition that comes to me. And I had to explain to him. And it was like for me a challenge because I always interact with people that have a kind of a medium to high knowledge about climate change. It's always some kind of preaching to the choir. So it's really good when I or anyone else that is in the sector find themselves talking and interacting with someone that is on the opposite side of the spectrum, because it's a challenge. It makes us realize what are our limits and what we have to change. So my first approach was like going for the complicated scientific explanation, or you have to look at the specific factors and so on. And I saw immediately that it didn't care at all,
Mhm.
because it wasn't something that he could relate. But
Right.
then I started to say, you're a taxi driver. You use on a daily basis your car. What were the main differences that you notice, for example, in the cost of gas, or what is that you notice that change in the way of living based on the environment that you find in Sevilla? And immediately started, of course it wasn't a straight answer. There were many different directions that we took while we were talking, but he was saying that the prices of the gas increased, and it was noticing that it was becoming warmer and warmer, and he didn't understand. And from the few news that he was following online, it was like that sometimes it was blaming the government, sometimes they were blaming the multinational companies of fossil fuels. So the main point is that it was in a general condition of distress. but he didn't know exactly to uh, to
Where to
almost,
channel that?
yeah, where to channel it, where to point the finger. Because that's the point. When you're in this situation, you don't want an explanation. You want like an escape, or you want something that can take all of your distress, all your uncertainty, and becomes this sort of well, in sociology or in anthropology is called the othering, meaning that you create an entity that represent all your bad feelings, all your animosity against something that you created, that you portrayed it in a way that represent all your fears and nightmares. The main point, and going back to also your question, is that um, I let's say I expose this taxi driver to a weakened version of a lie. So Shell is doing enough. And what I say is yes, Shell, based also on your opinion, is doing enough. Like you can see that your work wasn't impacted at all. You're still working. You're still getting money. But then I give the fact, and the fact is not framed as data, numbers, and so on. It's framed as a personal experience. So what I say, oh, I have also, my uncle is also a taxi driver. He's a taxi driver and he's complaining quite a lot about these factors. And so, as I say before, the increase in the prices of gas, or the fact that he always have to put the AC on in the taxi because in the taxi because the temperature are continually increasing, and it's not able to spend 8 hours in a in a metal coffin with wheels. Um, and then that at a certain point we were talking about with which, and we were talking about diet and alimentation. Was, oh, tomatoes don't have anymore the same flavor. And I was saying, oh, and why you think that is that? So it's almost, and this is something that we got from the past. We use a technique that was used by Socrates. There is the maeutic technique.
Yes.
That it's not me that I give you the truth. It's you through your mental process and you through
The,
your
so,
own
the,
words.
the Socratic method, yeah.
Yeah, that you arrive to the truth. So it's never about imposing. And this is something that I saw many times, particularly from climate advocates. I understand that you have all this great knowledge and all this great passion, but in order to have an impact and change minds, and by change minds, I mean, it's not that we're trying to lobby our way to make climate action the topic of the moment, because it should be, but it's not the right way of approaching in this way. If I go, I don't know, in different settings and I started to impose my own vision on others, the number of people that will listen to me will always be close to zero. Instead, promoting active listening, being able to kind of wear the shoes of the person that is in front of us, and creating a narrative that is based on their own perspective, not on my perspective, change completely the game. Change the game in a way that we create a new way of interpreting climate action as a common challenge, not our challenge, as a human challenge. Because at the moment it's polarized. At the moment it's a source of divisions. And the more we continue, the more the geopolitical situation becomes more fragile, the more we start to face these problems. Because at the moment it's evident that we're having heat waves that are not normal for the period in which we are living. But you can blame different things. And the only solution, one main solution, is certainly starting to approach this thing from a personal audience targeted perspective, not anymore as this is the problem, this is the facts, you should understand him, it's your fault if you're not able to understand this perspective.
Yeah. So thank you. So allow me to summarize one thing that you think that really could help, and I personally strongly agree, is to have a relational, emotional approach to other people when we talk about this, and to talk about it from their own experience insofar as we can.
Yes, absolutely. I think that it's important to say that the number of tools that are available in order to understand disinformation, in particular climate disinformation, it's I don't know. Every day I find a new one, and so there is a lot of there is a lot of momentum for climate disinformation at the moment.
There is.
I really recommend a few games, because I think that games are a great way to approach topics that are not, let's say, for everyone, even though they should. Like I really like Cranky Uncle, that teach these strategies with humor. So it teach debunking through games. Also, if you are from Gen Z, or if you are addicted to social media, there are powerful short videos on TikTok. There are different influencers that I can share that I really like their approach, because it's not about, hey, let me tell you the 3 different strategies to tackle this information. They try to use this truth sandwich in order to break down greenwashing, ads, or fake climate claims.
I think let's absolutely put any and all recommendations that you
Yeah.
have in the episode description for people to take a look at afterwards.
Regarding this last point, apart from personalizing, humanizing the way that we talk and interact and explain these topics, there is a really important factor: the messenger. If I receive the majority of the information from, I don't know, an institutional figure, let's say a commissioner, a policymaker, someone that I don't recognize as my peer, this will really work, because I don't connect, I don't recognize that person as someone that is in my personal circle, in my social circle. So the messenger should be someone that I trust: a teacher, a farmer, a local leader. If we take, for example, the European Commission at a certain point started to understand this major problem and switch their own communication strategies to have messengers that were trusted. So there was the overarching communication strategy, but then there was a ramification, diversification based on the countries that were included. And the message or the narrative was then transmitted by local messengers, local influencers that were recognized by the society as peers. And this changed completely the impact of narrative. When I was working for DG Environment, I had the pleasure to participate in these huge communication campaigns. That is called Reset the Trend, about banning or at least reducing the impact of fast fashion. And different countries were involved, and for each country there were a group of influencers that were enhancing the message coming directly from the commission in a personalized and local perspective, and this made all the difference. Last point: communication is not enough. We also need stronger rules for platforms, more transparency about who founds climate messages, and better education, particularly this last point.
Yes.
I find the closest thing to pure shame when I think that I starting with my own country, but moving to others, the lack of environmental and climate education. It's like
And it makes
yeah.
it so hard for people to discern between what is true and what isn't, and what is
Yeah.
interest driven and what is more positive societally impact driven. It lack of education in the end also it makes discernment so much harder.
Absolutely, because fighting disinformation is not just about correcting facts. It's about creating a society where there are the condition for building trust and critical thinking. If I'm able to distinguish between facts and fake news, that's the first step. If I'm able to trust the sender that promote a certain perspective about climate change or environmental topics, that's another step. And then if I can apply my own critical thinking to this process, then we have an entire process that creates a society that ideally it's disinformation proof. This is like in a hypothetical situation. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
and but that's what I asked for too. So that's my fault just as much. But I think that it's important to have an aspirational vision, even if you know it's not going to be realized tomorrow. We need something to work towards.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. At the moment, I think that the main priority should to I'm focusing on a European level, but it is something that is spread everywhere. It's important to recognize that disinformation, in particular climate disinformation, is not only an external threat at the policy level, but also on a scientific level. It's always considered as an external factor, and instead it should be also checked, looked, and analyzed at an internal level, meaning that we should start to consider the policies and the way that we communicate them as possible source of disinformation. So started to analyze them and understand why we have this sort of continuous pattern of disinformation present in the environmental policies, the way that we communicate them, and the way they are received by the population. So these three factors, these three core nodes are fundamental, and we should be able to act on the first one by creating system that allow to have policies that ideally take in consideration formal disinformation, are able to tackle them from the beginning. Secondly, the way that we communicated through a coordinated communication that start to implement form of pre-banking from the definition of them, and then working at the citizen level through educational programs, citizen engagement, because yes, education is one thing, but if you don't involve citizens in processes that concern them, it's 50% of the
adoption.
process. Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely these are the main factors that, in my opinion, we should focus at the moment, at least at the European level, considering also the geopolitical situation, strong ways of disinformation, far right narrative, and movements that go against everything that we built at the moment. We should be, as Europeans, a beacon against all of that, but this is not I wouldn't frame it as a fight. I wouldn't frame it as a war. I will frame it as a first brick in this bridge that we have to build in order to eliminate, delete form of polarization and division in order to act as a unite group against um, against these growing forms of disinformation and frictions. And the point is not me against you, because that's the base of like just replicating the problem in other contexts, but creating more and more bricks that help to have this bridge. And I will use the metaphor of the bridge just as a point of connection.
Yeah.
Um,
Not us against them, but us for us.
Yeah. So us as humans, and this is a concept that is most of the time quite far-fetched, quite far from us, because it's really hard from an identity perspective to say, oh, yes, I'm a human, but first of all, I don't know, I'm Italian, then I'm European, then I'm another level. And all these different layers are not only identity layers, but also sort of walls that divide us between even the person that is sitting close to me on a tram or that I'm working with. All these different layers are also filters that continuously hinder our critical thinking and our possibility of building trust in these pivotal and critical processes that concern creating a climate morality, climate ethics, and the implementation of behavioral processes that start from the bottom and at the same time from the top and meet in the middle.
Okay. Well, thank you, Stefano. We talked through a lot, I think. Talked about climate disinformation, the different shapes it takes, the interests it serves, its historical origins, public policy responses, personal approaches. So I think we covered quite a lot. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, the last thing that I would like to mention, to say, if you have to take one thing away from this specific conversation, it will be this. In any kind of bit of information that you read, consume, and so on, always ask, who benefits if I believe this? This information doesn't just happen, it's design. So every time you read something about climate, whether, I don't know, it's a tweet, I don't know if any more people use X, or newspaper headlines, pause for a moment. Who created that message? Who pays for it? What do they want you to feel? Fear, anger, distrust? So one habit that I really promote and would like people that will listen to this podcast to train is critical questioning, not only critical thinking. Critical questioning can protect you more than any form of fact checking. I tell this to every possible group of not only young people, but mostly young people I mentor, talk to, and so on. When something makes you feel superior, scared, furious, slow down for a moment, because misinformation loves speed, and resistance instead begins with attention. Yeah, that's all.
I love that. I very much agree wholeheartedly. Resistance is an extremely intentional act. Thank you, Stefano, for this interview, and thank you, listener, for listening.
Thank you for listening to the WAVE podcast. We are voices of ecology. If you're inspired to act, share, and learn, connect with us, then follow us on Instagram at WAVE Project EU and share the episode with another person today. Every bit keeps the wave moving forward.